Willem, are you there? What
There
is
he
terrain?
is.
Welcome to the
Hey
show.
guys,
What's going
how
on?
are you?
Look
How
at
are
this.
you?
Look at this popping in with the art. What do you got behind you?
Yeah, break it
Can
down
you
for
paint it
us.
This
yourself,
this is
or is it?
actually a piece that my mother made.
Oh, that's
There
So
we
nice.
I'll
go.
I'll put a plug out for her work. It's Catherine Van Lancker.
Shout
She
out
There we
Catherine
she's a
go.
Van
painter. She's
Lancker.
been a painter my whole life.
Fantastic. Can you break us
Yeah,
down? What is terrain? What are you working on? And what are you announcing most recently?
yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me here, guys. It's
Of course.
Yeah, it's great to have you
great
on.
to see you both. So Terrain is an early stage investment firm that I started last year with Eric Stromberg. And we back founders who have specific and ambitious views of the future.
Hmm.
We like to say these are people who call their shot. These
Hmm.
are folks like Zach Dell and Justin Lopez
Yeah.
at Base Power,
Yep.
Alex Mather at Eternal,
Oh yeah.
uh, Zach Abrams and Sean Yu at Bridge. And increasingly, we think that this is just going to be very important to build a meaningful and lasting company, whether you're attracting capital or building an audience or building a team, that being able to clearly articulate your vision of the future is just going to be the things that separates the good from great.
Yeah, definite optimism. I want to know about like the whole call your shot, your declare your free agency thing. It feels much earlier than, hey, show up on Sand Hill Road and raise a mango seed round in a weekend. Walk me through the different options that founders are facing these days. They can go do YC, especially if they have a good track record. They can even do EIR programs at Founders Fund, or that's what I did. Like I wound up doing this.
Freudian slip.
But at VC funds,
Yeah.
they have EIR programs that are like a little bit more flexible for
Yep.
folks. But where do you see slotting in? Because it sounds like you're thinking pretty early stage.
Yes. So, first and foremost, we're an investment firm. We invest from that really early stage, which I'll talk about shortly, through to seed and Series A. So we're very kind of flexible in kind of where we enter and, work with, those companies that existed are, raising mango seeds or Series A's, whatever you want to call it. Uh, this most recent program we launched is called Free Agency.
Mm-hmm.
And what that is a concentrated 90-day period before you have your idea
Mm-hmm.
to go through a focused exploration to uncover your idea.
Mm-hmm.
And this stems from the belief that it's kind of a missing thing in the market. It's something that I saw while I was at Thrive Capital, where we were partnering with people who had an edge or an interest area in a certain technology or a background, but we're not yet convicted behind what that is. And the venture industrial complex tries to give you capital and quite frankly, perhaps before you're ready, and make those commitments and those decisions before you're ready. And so with free agency, what we're doing is we're unbundling that from selecting your idea and taking capital. So there's no strings attached. There's no cohorts. There's no demo day. There's no kind of deal that you have to take. It is really this period of open exploration. And our hope is that it results in more thoughtful and deeply convicted ideas from the founders we get to work with. And on the other side of that, if it makes sense to partner with Terrain, fantastic. We will be there and waiting. But we believe that that is just something that is really needed. And we're on the last day of applications today. And quite frankly, been really surprised and elated by how many people this seems to resonate with.
Do you think most people can figure out if an idea is good or bad without spending money? Because the typical accelerators like come in, we're going to give you 200 to 500 grand, maybe a little bit more. And then you're just going to start spending money to like figure out if the sort of high level idea that you had is good. Now, I think a lot of really brilliant entrepreneurs do all the work to sort of like make that idea concrete, sometimes for years prior without ever spending sort of explicit dollars. But venture dollars are so available. So as part of this program to basically say like, all you need to do is invest time and energy into exploring your idea. And you actually don't need money, but when the time comes to actually hit go, we'll be there. Other funds in your network will be. So maybe talk about that, because like you at Thrive Capital leading incubations, you guys incubated a lot of companies. I'm sure you also explored potentially thousands of ideas, right? And so maybe talk about kind of your process. And I imagine a lot of free agency is like built out of, and your sort of process internally is like, how do you evaluate ideas? How do you kind of build conviction without having to spend a lot of money?
Yeah. So One good feature of today's ecosystem is that we actually have access to a lot of resources that maybe didn't exist, in decades prior. Every person that participates in free agency gets access to over 350 grand in compute resources and service resources, that sort of thing. So there is some capital to deploy, via technology. That is not, dilutive or anything in that regard. The process, and I'll kind of go back to kind of zooming out for a second. Um, each of these products, EIR, accelerator, incubator, free agency, they're products for founders, right? And so you have to meet the founder kind of with what they need in that moment. Free agency is not going to be for every single type of founder, and it doesn't need to be. If you're a young person and you're looking to get access to network and enter entree into Silicon Valley, accelerators are phenomenal for you. But what we found with the people that we're engaging with is that they don't want to be put onto that track. They don't want to be kind of put onto that timeline and make those decisions kind of too far up front. Instead, what they want is close partnership to dissect an idea, to dissect a market with the perspective of investors and with the perspective of someone who can be that thought partner through the journey. And, you guys have both started companies, like, that feeling of being close to something, but not quite there. Like, it is not the myth that is often told on stage where, you're struck by lightning one day, or like Almighty comes down and just drops the idea into your head. It is a process of iteration, of staring into the abyss at times. And we just think that there can be some structure placed on that and some shortcuts to strengthen the business model or strengthen their travel through the idea. It's what we saw time and time again at Thrive. And the reason to not attach capital to it is, one, both for that point of commitment and restriction, but the other is, I think it makes you make decisions differently. I think that you either, if you have that stipend and you're hanging out in the offices and you're drinking the spa water in the VC office every day, I think you have a different mentality about the burning platform and the company that you need to go and build. And so we think that, actually creating a little bit of a pressure cooker during that time is really, really important.
Yeah, I completely agree.
YC
is.
I love
nothing
spa
if
water
not-
too. I mean,
Yeah, but
a lot of great spa
like
water.
one of the best benefits of YC is just like the competition of like seeing everyone around you, the pressure, and having a deadline. It's great. I wanted to ask about like archetypes that you're seeing. Like there's so many different people that I could imagine going into this, from the repeat founder who really wants to make sure that they call their next shot and they take a big swing in it and they're ready to set up with a lot of capital when they're going, versus the early stage employee at a growth stage company that wants to move on to something new, leverage something, but wants to fully transition out of the previous company, versus like the high school college dropout. Is there a pattern, or are you just widely open to everything?
It's been really open. So we've had hundreds of applicants already.
Mm-hmm.
These have been engineers and designers at companies like OpenAI and Databricks, SpaceX, Ramp, like you name it. We have a Gen Z creator who has millions of followers, more research focused people like, from DeepMind, and then some successful repeat founders, both in our network and kind of entering, from the application. And I think what it illustrates is that there isn't something really like this. And I feel, kind of, you're supposed to keep these things secret for a while, but it really feels like we've hit on something to meet people in this moment at this stage. I think with this first batch, we're going to experiment and try to take on a real diversity of people while keeping it focused. But I imagine over time, we'll start to see a kind of a consistency form. But, more than anything, I think these are people who are not starting something because someone else told them to. They're starting something because they believe that this is almost the last resort, right? It's like, I can't join a great company, or I'm at a great company and I have this thing kind of burning in me to go build a company.
Is when you're calling your shot, you have a big sort of vision for the world, is talking to customers overrated? Like the YC approach is like, have a loose idea, iterate quickly, talk to a lot of customers, and that clearly works. But at the same time, we've seen some other like sort of major power law businesses where they clearly just had like a vision for how they imagine the world. And you got to talk to customers along the way because you have to sell to them. Yeah. But
it's the Henry Ford thing. Like if I asked people, they would have said a faster horse. The ultimate, like, I didn't talk to customers guy is Henry Ford.
Yeah. Look, I think Henry Ford certainly talked to customers along the way,
Yeah, I
but I
guess he
think
did.
that had the vision of what he wanted to create, and
Yeah.
that's the case that we see with with people like Zach Dell at Base. It's like he wants this idea of energy too cheap to meet it, right? And that's where the starting point is. And let's work backwards from that because if we can achieve that view, we know we can appeal to customers, right? Or Zach, a lot of Zachs here, Zach at Bridge. You know, started that company not during a time when cryptocurrencies and stablecoins were all the rage, right? It was
Mhm.
built on internal conviction over many, many years. And I think that in the environment today where software has eaten the world, and you should assume that if you're onto something interesting, there are two or three other competent, well-funded, good people going after it as well. It has to be, from that kind of internal conviction, not from, I pulled 500 people and they told me that, dogs want this type of,
Mm.
X, right?
Yeah.
Do you
There was an era where I think that worked, and I think we're out of that era.
do you think founders get way too much validation of their ideas from investors?
Mm.
Because I've fallen into this trap before where if people will invest in your company, if really smart people will invest in your company, sometimes you can think, well, this must be a good idea, because people were willing to bet on it. When usually from the investor's point of view, there's tons of scenarios where investors are like, yeah, I'm sort of so on the idea, but this guy's just so great. So is that some kind of like, I'm curious if like, one of the, like you should basically get validation in your idea by spending enough time with it, spending time talking with other intelligent people that aren't just incentivized to deploy capital, but actually want to help you find that, help you get to the point where you can actually call your shot.
Totally. Look, I think that maybe 15 or 20 years ago, when seed VC and early stage venture was more scarce, you could rely on that. Like, you could say, well, there's someone who's willing to stake capital on this, and thus I've passed through some barrier. Now, that didn't mean that it was, the next Google or Facebook, but there was some barrier that you passed through. I don't think that's the case. And I think that honestly, the best founders are not solving for capital at the beginning. There's more options available for them than ever. There's bootstrapping, there's, coming in with past success, there's friends you have around the table. And so what I think that means is that the moment you put up that flag and say, I want to start something, and you're, a talented individual with great experience, those offers start rolling in. And you have to have the internal fortitude and disposition to say, I need to make sure this is the right thing because that investor or that angel investor is going to place who knows how many bets. And you're going to place one during this period of time. You are an investor of your time, and that is one thing that you can do during this period. And you have to take that really seriously. So I think that it's much more about finding that for yourself because you can't outsource conviction and you can't outsource that type of diligence, especially when the incentives aren't necessarily fully aligned.
I have a question.
Go for it.
You used LeBron James in your launch video. Where do you stand on the GOAT debate? Is he a better basketball player than Michael Jordan?
As a kid of the '90s, I think it's got to go to MJ.
Okay.
That video it pained me as a Celtics fan to show him in a Lakers jersey winning championships. But look, he's someone that I think had doubters throughout his career, even does
Yeah.
today, and now Bronny after him.
Yeah.
So and you got to tune it out, And I think that if you're doing something right, then people will throw shade at you, and I think it's a great thing.
It's still a great metaphor. Do you have a last question? Then we'll
Yeah,
wrap it up.
last question. I'm sure you get hit up by people all the time that are starting venture studios, incubators, etc. You like ran incubations at Thrive. Now you're running a traditional venture fund. I'm sure you could do an incubation, but do you think that model is best done opportunistically versus systematically? What's your takeaway from doing a bunch of these?
Totally. The Going back to that kind of idea of products and a product person, like you have to be building a product for a great audience. And I think that you need to be honest with yourself about what value you provide to a founder. And, um, you know, incubation is a really appealing tool, right? And I think it's like, hey, we can get more ownership and we can kind of, I have all these great ideas and I can create it. But I see a lot of VCs piling into it, I think, for the wrong reasons and are going to make some mistakes. I think there's a real alchemy that it takes to get it right. And you have to know, just like as a founder, I think you have to know where your edge is. And when I was at Thrive, my focus was on incubations and it was working really closely with founders right from the beginning. But there was always a humility in the fact that the founders are going to build this company, that we need to, put the right environment together to help them, find it. And then also there's a lane of where we can incubate and where we can't. And these are areas that at Thrive, it was, heavily regulated industries. There are really large markets that perhaps would take deep capital availability to succeed within. And it wasn't everything. And that, I think, was the beauty of being able to do both things of do early stage investing and incubate, allows you to have that flexibility. And it's something that, I believe will do really well at Terrain too.
Awesome. Well, congratulations and good luck.
Yeah, no, it's open for until the end of today. Maybe
people can
midnight.
apply right now.
Maybe midnight.
Yeah, people can apply. It's been open for the last few months.
And you got a great domain too, terrain.com.
Terrain.com/free agency.
Love a good domain.
It's a short application. Hope to see some people that cite TBPN as the source that they got it from.
Thank you. Your next Powerwall winner is coming from our audience.
There we go. Thanks, guys.
Thanks
we'll
for
see you
coming on.
soon.